What's up guys, Anton here, and today we'll be talking about the HUAWEI Mate series. And it's on top of the DxO Mark leaderboards once again with their new flagship, the HUAWEI Mate 50 Pro. Now, with their new ultra aperture camera, this flagship comes with some innovative camera tricks up its sleeve that can one-up the big boys from both Apple and Samsung. Now, it goes without saying that this device is premium from top to bottom, from feature set to its awesome build that we'll talk about a bit later on, after we see just how this flagship camera from Huawei holds up against the iPhone 14 Pro and the S22 Ultra. But first, don't forget to show some support by leaving a like and subscribing to the channel, and by checking out our other socials on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok for more Unbox PH content and giveaways. Now, heading back over to DxO Mark, we see the HUAWEI Mate 50 Pro plastered everywhere, and for good reason, as it currently sits on the top above all other smartphone cameras. So what shooters are we getting on this ultra premium device? Let's start off with the 13 megapixel ultra wide camera with a 120-degree field of view for those super wide shots, a 64 megapixel telephoto periscope with a 3.5 times optical zoom for super detailed portraits, and lossless zoom. Though the main star of the show here is the 50 megapixel ultra aperture camera. With a 10-level adjustable physical aperture, the HUAWEI Mate 50 Pro can support a real aperture of f4.0 all the way up to f1.4, the industry's largest so far. Now, with such a large aperture, this means we can expect much better performance in two things: low light and portrait shots. The much wider aperture compared to the f1.8 ratios we see on the iPhone and Galaxy phones means the HUAWEI Mate 50 Pro receives much more light for ultimately better nighttime performance with their super night mode. The f1.4 aperture also gives us much better portrait shots with sub-millimeter separation, giving us more natural bokeh, whereas most other phones have to rely on AI or software to mimic this optical phenomena because of their hardware limitations. The physical aperture can go all the way up to f1.4, like I said, for a shallow focus and better low light performance, all the way down to f4.0 for a wider focus range for crisp group shots and clean landscape photos. This makes the HUAWEI Mate 50 Pro one step closer to achieving DSLR-like quality photos in terms of detail and subject separation with the ease of usual smartphone photography. Now, as we've seen from other devices, hardware isn't everything, so let's actually compare this ultra-premium Huawei device to the most heavy-hitting smartphones in the market this 2022. Let's first focus on the ultra-large aperture of f1.4 on the Mate 50 Pro, which lets in about 66% more light compared to the f1.8 apertures on the iPhone and Galaxy flagships. Starting off with this photo of a roof I took in my neighborhood. The first thing I noticed is that with the Mate 50 Pro, you instantly notice the stars in the sky more. Whereas the Galaxy Ultra, they don't stand out as much, and on the iPhone, you can barely even notice them. Moving on to some nightscape shots of BGC, where this phone really shines. The Mate 50 Pro stands above the Galaxy S22 Ultra even with its 108 megapixel camera. You can see that some windows here are much sharper and clearer than on the much bigger Samsung device. The dynamic range is really something else compared to the iPhone 14 Pro. Light sources in these shots are much more balanced and still captures detail like inside the buildings and street lamps. Well, overall, images are just purer compared to the Apple flagship with much less noise and better dynamic range. Moving on to day shots, the ultra aperture camera easily lets in more light thanks to that much larger aperture on the Mate 50 Pro, where some colors and shadows are absolutely crushed on the iPhone. The Galaxy S22 Ultra does compensate a bit with some image processing, but is far from the detail and clarity of the Mate 50 Pro. Now, this shot of a tree outside my house though is where the S22 kind of falls apart, where image processing is just a bit too much. The iPhone does pretty well here with excellent dynamic range, but the Mate 50 Pro does much better in terms of color accuracy and detail. Now zooming into its leaves, the Mate 50 Pro takes the cake with a 3.5x optical zoom on its periscope lens, making for the 10x shot much more detailed than the competing phones. I did think that the S22 Ultra would come close in this 10x shot, but its overprocessing kind of held it back, falling behind even the iPhone 14 Pro. Now moving on to some portrait shots of Jay here, but I really want to focus on just how well the Mate 50 Pro isolated the subject. Looking at her hair here, the iPhone does come close in terms of detail and clarity, but the Mate 50 Pro is on a different level with super well-balanced dynamic range. Now here is a traditional portrait shot with your expected bokeh. This is where the ultra aperture camera really shines by naturally isolating the subject from the foreground. You can easily tell just how much better the Mate 50 Pro is with applying bokeh by looking at complex shapes and how the phone is able to separate that from the background. Now the iPhone does an amazing job here with their powerful A16 Bionic chip, really making the cutout look as natural as it can with post-processing. The S22 Ultra though has some ways to go because the cutout processing looks so much more obvious when zooming in, especially when it comes to hair. The more natural bokeh of the f1.4 aperture on the Mate 50 Pro gives the software so much more information for subject separation, making for one of the cleanest portrait shots we've seen on a smartphone. Compared to the Galaxy S22 Ultra, the Mate 50 Pro looks like it was taken on a DSLR camera with its clean sub-millimeter separation. The Mate 50 Pro is way ahead of the competition thanks to its natural separation of the subject thanks to the f1.4 aperture, so barely any AI is used in this application of bokeh. You can clearly see that because fringe hairs are still crisp and clean, separate from the blurred background where it's almost absent on the other two phones. So the cameras on the Mate 50 Pro are definitely up there, and with a little time invested, you can get professional grade photos on just a handheld device. This phone really shines above the rest, especially in low light, with incomparable amounts of detail and much less noise without looking over-processed. This is all thanks to the ultra aperture camera, giving us the largest aperture in the smartphone industry with a f1.4 focal ratio, the future of low light performance, and one step closer to professional grade photography. Everything around the cameras are top tier as well, especially when it comes to build quality. Now this device is the sophisticated vegan leather version of the device, coming in this super unique and bright orange color inspired by the rays of the sun, or Unbox PH. Now the screen features the durable and rock-solid Kunlun glass, the first material to be rated 5 stars by SGS Switzerland, so this device is 10 times more drop resistant than the Mate 40 Pro. It's protecting a 6.74-inch OLED display at 120Hz with a 1212 by 2616 resolution. Now this model has 8GB of RAM and half a terabyte of storage and is powered by the latest Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1. Now this power efficient chip maximizes the 4700 mAh battery with 66 watts of charging and 50 watts of wireless charging, getting you ready to go in just less than an hour. Now, did I mention that this flagship comes with a charger in the box? Do what you will with that information. Now, this is all running on Huawei's latest EMUI 13, giving you the always growing Huawei suite of apps and access to super device features for seamless connectivity with your other Huawei products. Though, don't worry, there are many workarounds to get the necessary Google suite on here if Petal isn't for you. Make sure to check out our TikTok page if you want to find out how. EMUI 13 also comes with some awesome quality of life improvements, such as low battery emergency mode. Now with this feature, you can get 3 hours of standby time and even 12 minutes of phone calls to make sure that you get what you need done before the phone shuts off. Another handy EMUI 13 feature is the Super Hub, which helps you avoid switching between apps unnecessarily by temporarily storing what you need in a floating window to be easily transferred to another app or other Mate products. And lastly, EMUI 13 shines with the super storage, where the OS intelligently compresses duplicate files or videos or photos automatically trying to save on space. So if you receive the same photo or video from different messaging apps, you won't inadvertently be wasting memory. So that's about it for the HUAWEI Mate 50 Pro. Easily the best imaging setup we've seen on a smartphone so far, thanks to its unrivaled versatility and accurate image processing. The ultra aperture camera really is something else, giving us the largest aperture in the industry, and it does make a huge difference with portrait and low light photography. Now, if you are interested in the HUAWEI Mate 50 Pro, I'll be leaving the prices just around here. So what do you guys think of this device? Let us know in the comments down below. Once again, my name is Anton, and thanks for watching.
I withdraw on the things I make. I turn flaws into flawless traits. I build tall, never capped in space. I won't stop till I hear him say, oh, oh.